Okay, we'll get started. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, PL 1975, Chapter 231, this regular adequate notice of this regular meeting of the Planning Board of the Township of Franklin has been provided. If everyone would please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, roll call.
Councilman Chase. Mr. Coble.
Here.
Mr. LaCourte.
Here.
Ms. MacGyver.
Here.
Mr. Mettler. Mr. Pettit.
Here.
Mr. Stevens.
Here.
Mr. Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Alderman.
Here.
Mr. Onyaka.
Here.
Chairman Orsini.
Here. Just administratively, before we get on the agenda tonight, Genesis, FBCCDC, Somerset Senior Housing, PLN 11-00015 is going to be carried to October 3rd. That's Wednesday, October 3rd, with no further notification. So if you're here for that application, it won't be heard tonight, it will be heard October 3rd, and there will be no further notice in the paper about that. With that out of the way, next item is the regular meeting minutes from July 18th. If there are no comments or corrections, I will accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Coble.
Yes.
Mr. LaCourte.
Yes.
Ms. MacGyver.
Yes.
Mr. Pettit.
Yes.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Alderman.
Yes.
Mr. Onyaka.
Yes.
Chairman Orsini.
Yes. Next up is resolutions. We have two, docket PLN 12-00005 Avalon Bay.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. Coble.
Yes.
Mr. McClort.
Yes.
Ms. MacGyver.
Yes.
Mr. Pettit.
Yes.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Chairman Orsini.
Yes. And the second one is PLN 11-00008 RPM Development.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Coble.
Yes.
Mr. LaCourte.
Yes.
Ms. MacGyver.
Yes.
Mr. Pettit.
Yes.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Chairman Orsini.
Yes. Moving on, discussion. First item is vouchers. We'll just do this by affirmation and we'll do them together. They're nothing more than the standard August and September retainers. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. That'll carry. And let the minutes note that Dr. Chase is arriving at 7:35. On the agenda, I think the McAfee Road School Trailer is next. We're just going to switch that with Councilman Kramer's webcast discussion because I think that's going to be quicker. So if Councilman Kramer, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Orsini, and thank you for allowing me to come and speak. This should be simple. About a month and a half, 2 months ago, Council voted to allow the council meetings to be webcast, not live, but about 2 or 3 days later they go up. This way people no longer have to go to the library to check out a CD or DVD to watch it. What I'm asking is that you do the same, and if you want to be looking forward a little bit so you don't have to see me again, in January or maybe a little thereafter, we're going to have a new website up, and that hopefully will allow for live webcasting. So I'm hoping you will vote for one, if not both of those. Are there any questions?
Since I know we haven't had the discussion about live meetings in some time, can we put that on the docket for the work session in October 3rd work session?
Well,
Just because we haven't discussed it, I mean, I don't want to pull surprises on anybody.
I think you can decide tonight. You've already changed your bylaws to allow the
Right.
So it's really not much of a change. It's just really a minor tweak. So I would think you just poll the board, and if the board is fine with it, you just,
Yeah,
I can advise tomorrow the
we could do
acting
that.
manager, and we can move forward.
Not pushing either thing, I'm just.
No, that's fine. I mean, as far as part one, Vince informs me that that's really, doesn't even need a vote, because essentially we have already approved television broadcast and taping of the TV. It's just a question of how to access that. So the board need not act on the first one. That can be done. It's fine. I'm telling you right now, it's not going to be an issue, because it's just a question of how to get it, not whether we're taping it or not.
Yeah, I just want to be able to tell the acting manager tomorrow that it's okay to move forward. So if you're telling me that's okay, then I will
Well, if
tell her tomorrow it's
It doesn't
okay.
materially change what we've already decided, then I think we'd just go for it. I mean, if you want, if it makes you more comfortable, I can.
No, it's fine. You've already decided you can move forward, and I'll just advise her tomorrow.
But what I'm willing to do now, if you just want to get it out of the way, not that we wouldn't want to see you in January or February anyway, because you're always welcome, but I'm more than willing to poll the board right now on live meeting. Just to let, is council doing that already?
Council hasn't voted on that. It just occurred to me, actually, as I was walking up here, maybe kill two birds in one stone. The plan is to eventually have live webcasting when we change the website. Now, that costs a little bit of money, so we don't know yet. We've got to wait for a budget, a few things like that. But that's the eventual plan. You may, if you care to, you may want to pass it that, should that become available, then you're ready for it. But I actually haven't asked council of that yet.
Okay, so we would be essentially breaking some new ground.
There you go.
All right, so I'm willing to open it up just to quickly to anybody with strong feelings one way or the other.
No problem.
No problem at all.
All right, so let's do this. Everyone who is in favor of when the technology or website becomes available to do live broadcasts of the planning board meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Well, about the easiest thing you'll ever get.
Thank you, folks.
Okay. So that brings us to, thanks, Phil. That brings us to this last discussion item, which is a McAfee Road school trailer relocation.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, let me just advise you that they're coming before you tonight for informational only, and they will listen to any of your comments. They're not required to take those comments and make any changes, but they're required by the law to come before you and make you aware of any changes that they're doing to their site. So that's why they're here tonight. They're replacing a bunch of their trailers. This is the only trailer that is significant in that they're removing some trees. So I thought it was important that they came tonight and explained to you what they're doing and listen to you and give you some input so that you can decide how you want to advise them.
Okay.
Thanks, Vince. Good evening. We appreciate the planning board providing a spot for us tonight. My name is Patrick Sywell. I represent the Design Resources Group Architects. We are the
Patrick,
architects.
just for our attorney who's taking notes, can you just spell your last name? Please?
Sure, last name is Seiwell.
I
Patrick,
know I would have gotten that wrong, so
no problem.
thank you.
But I'm here to present tonight, once again, working with the Franklin Board of Education as architect of record. As you may or may not know, they're replacing some TCUs throughout the district, and we're in the process of bringing this particular site to you, McAfee. This was a little bit of a change based on some long-range planning that the current Board of Education is doing right now. Population explosion at McAfee and some of the other sites. They're taking a look at some potential development at the sites. So this is the reason why we're actually bringing this McAfee before the planning board, because we are moving the position of the existing TCUs where they were originally placed. Let me just set you up. This is the overall site. You could see we're about 11.5 acres, and you can see the surrounding residential properties on McAfee Road. That's the one in the upper left here. The one in the lower left, basically an aerial showing you where where we're proposing placing the TCUs. They were originally placed right in the back of this wing that you see here. Behind that is a greenhouse that's currently sited right behind it there. And once again, because of the potential of possibly adding on to this site, we're trying to get it out of the way so we don't have to move it twice. By placing it now and perhaps moving it 3 or 4 years later, you're really you're spending a lot of money for really no reason there. So the proposal that you see before you in the lower right, we have them setting themselves up over here on the east side, what I'll call the east side of the property, adjacent to a few of the residential properties that you see there. We will have to, and you can see the original tree line, we will have to take some of the trees away from that area in order to install the TCUs. We have also shown at 6 feet on center, and we did get some other information from the planning board as far as the species, but we are willing, or I should say the Board of Education is willing, to go back and actually plant some screening to help the density along the back of the trailers where they're placed there. A few of the reasons why we're pushing it there, once again, pending development here for a potential wing. If we try to move it back into the fields, once again, it starts to eat into some of the play fields and some of the open space that the Board of Education wants to reserve for playgrounds and things like that. In addition to that, we didn't want to move the TCUs too far away. We actually sat with the principal and discussed a few options here in order to come to the conclusion that we're bringing before you here. But he felt, once again, with the pending or potential of the development back here, we wouldn't have to move them. They work functionally for him because they're close enough to the building from a safety and security standpoint. And if they do, in fact, are able to add on to this building, the children that are going to these TCUs get brought back into the building. These could be used for storage in the future. So there's a benefit to placing them in this position once, where you don't have to move them a few times. We have available utilities back there. The only infringement really is the fact that we will have to take out some of the trees back there. We'll try to minimize it and once again plant a buffer to the adjacent residential properties.
Thank you.
No, I realize.
Comments from the board? Jim?
No, I had some comments. I think you answered the question. I was wondering why they were putting them back there. There's plenty of other space they could put them without knocking down all the trees, so I figured put them on the corner, but he's explained that they're thinking about an expansion, I assume, from this, I call it the left-hand wing, as you're looking at the building coming to the left, that's where you think, I mean, right,
That's correct.
right, I should say, right.
Potentially, we're
Down
looking.
toward the greenhouse, is that where you think the expansion's gonna be?
Depending on how far or how big the program grows at this particular school, we may have to move the greenhouse. Hopefully, we won't have to do that.
Yeah, and you don't have enough room to slide them up behind the building, because I guess you'd be too close to the adjacent property owner, is that the reason they can't be put?
Are you saying over here?
Well, yeah, just in there, yeah.
This is another. Oh yeah, this is much too shallow for us here, and I believe it would be an even we would be infringing on that this potential piece of property here even more than, because we do have plenty of tree line along the back of these two residential properties here, and our buffer. I have it listed here, our buffer is almost 44 feet from the property line.
Yeah, but you're knocking down you're knocking down the woods, and then you have to recreate a buffer. I mean, it's like, if there's a way to save the woods, it would seem like try to save the woods. It's economically better.
Right.
If it works,
Right.
program-wise, if it works flow-wise.
So
Are there handicap facilities for children in the school building that these kids will use?
Yes, we're going to provide, we will
These
provide,
trailers are close enough to those facilities to meet the law?
yes.
Thank you.
You show a pathway leading up to the TCU.
That's correct.
What is that made of?
Right now, this needs to be rehabbed. The way, in talking to the principal, he would not walk them all the way out. They would actually come through this wing here, out this door, and then a set of barrier-free ramps and stairs would be provided to the trailers at that point.
It's this year.
So in bad weather, they wouldn't be in mud and dirt?
Oh, that's correct.
Leading up to
Yes. Yeah, we have to give them a clean path according to ADA and barrier-free.
I have a question.
Sure.
You're talking about trees, and you said you don't know, but approximately how many?
How many trees? I did take off the area. It's approximately a half acre worth of trees. I was discussing it with the Board of Education, the possibility of, right now, I'm showing this line kind of swinging this way. There's no reason why we can't save more of this. I could probably cut that by a third. So we're not.
But how many are you talking about? Approximately?
We don't-
Guesstimate.
You get the clearance. Like
You know,
you said,
5 is one thing,
down and
60 is another.
It's not worth it.
You're probably, in a half acre, you're probably looking at, 50 or 60 specimens.
Not old
Let
growth
the
stuff.
tree wax worry about it.
Some are relatively big, some are just saplings coming out of the ground. We're in the process of getting the entire property surveyed. This particular plan that you're looking at here was actually born from some old information from the Board of Education. I can certainly have them spot some of the bigger specimens and send that to Vince for your information.
The buffer you cite of 44 feet, is that after, or is that currently existing? What's the buffer going to be between that neighboring property and what is going to be?
Well, currently, it's, and you can see in the plan here, up in the, the tree line kind of dives a couple, right now, this is the buffer right in this little swatch here is probably only about 10 feet. But then it comes out and it varies from, I would say, anywhere from 60 feet all the way out here to probably 120 feet.
But that says currently,
That's current.
but when you, if you put these in, what will be the new?
Oh, I'm sorry, the final buffer would be approximately 44 feet to the back of the trailer
Okay,
and another 15 feet, 30 feet to the actual tree line.
okay. So more than enough room to enhance, like you said, with plantings, a lot of what you're taking out. I mean, I would encourage, I mean, let's be frank. So,
Sure.
you know, you're here informationally. We all realize how the school population is exploding, so there's probably no question in anybody's mind that this is needed. But just as an advisory, I think we'd all agree that to minimize, taking out trees as much as possible and to plant as many back as possible is, pretty much our advice.
I am with you on that, and I'll take that to the board, and we'll do everything we have to.
And I mean, I know that, you've worked with Mark and Vince and would continue to, for, like you said, getting species. I mean, these won't be a double row of arborvitae. These will actually be trees. And so,
Hey, why not?
that's probably the best that we can hope for.
Will some of these trees be evergreen, so there'll be year-round screening?
I'm not
Yeah,
a landscape,
All of the trees, I sent the architect or the contractor, I forget who.
Yes.
David,
Yes.
a list of, I think, 8 evergreen trees. I suggested that they be at least 6 to 8 feet at planting, and I suggested that they choose at least 4, that they mix in 4 different species. All of them were evergreen trees.
Good. That should do it.
Okay. Any other questions?
Do we have to open?
No, there's no requirement to open to the public.
I had one question. Where's your electrical panel? Where is that located here? This,
The new electrical hub or panel, if you
Yeah.
will be located right on the end. It's not going to sit out in the middle of the,
like on the side of the trailer in the end?
right on the end of the trailer, that's correct.
Right, I didn't see it.
Out of the way, right. Anything else?
I think just so we are above reproach, let's open it to the public, even if there's no one here, if there's a
Sure.
couple people here. We'll just do it because it's just, a good thing to do. So, does the board have any more comments? So I make a motion to open to the public.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody who'd like to speak on this matter is welcome to come forward. Okay. Seeing no takers, I move to close.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
You didn't advertise.
Okay. It's been a while since we've heard from the school board. Do we need any motion?
No, you've given him your information. You don't need to make any motion.
On behalf of the Board of Education, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so with Genesis off the docket for tonight, we have one application, and that is L'Oreal USA, PLN 120009. Applicant proposed to erect solar arrays. So,
And Frank's going to be brief tonight, right, Frank? You promised me you were going to try, right?
that's right.
I always try, but sometimes I don't succeed. All right, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board, members of the public. Francis P. Linus. My offices are at 21 Clyde Road in sunny Somerset, New Jersey. I'm pleased to represent L'Oreal tonight. L'Oreal is a major facility in town. The property in question tonight is a 4.22-acre portion of the site. It's known as Block 86.01, Lot 10.30, and it's located on the south side of Commerce Drive, and it's at the terminus of Dahmer Road. The proposal is to install a ground-mounted solar array on the lot. Ground-mounted solar arrays, along with any type of solar arrays, enjoy a special status under the law, the municipal land use law, because of the energy goals of the municipal land use law, has declared that solar panel arrays are an inherently beneficial use. So what we have tonight is not only a permitted use, but an inherently beneficial use. And the idea is to conserve energy, and this solar array, once you hear the testimony, will convince you of that. Property is located in an M2 zone, an industrial zone. In addition to another benefit of how the law treats solar arrays, the solar array itself, the law says, won't affect impervious coverage, won't affect any impervious. So that's what we have there. I only have one witness tonight, but I do have other representatives in case the board or the public have any questions. My witness is Craig Stiers. He's the site engineer. If necessary, we have Bob Duva. He's the manager of engineering of GeoPeak, and GeoPeak is the installer and the contractor of the solar array. And I also have with me Michael Ford, the senior construction project manager for GeoPeak, in case the board has any questions. Also with us tonight is Brad Jones from L'Oreal, in case the board or the public have any questions about the L'Oreal facility. So without further ado, I'd like to have Craig Stiers sworn in.
Mr. Stiers, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Now, Mr. Stiers has testified before this board numerous times, so I know his qualifications and accept him as your witness.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Stiers, did you and your firm prepare the site plan that's before the board this evening?
Yes.
Okay, would you describe in verbal terms the site and its existing conditions?
Sure. You want to mark this as?
Yes, you may want to mark that A1 and put a date on it.
As Mr. Linus said, L'Oreal has a complex at the end of Commerce Drive, not shown on the exhibit before you. First of all, the exhibit before you is a colored rendering of the submitted plan. But to the north is their main facility where their operations, warehousing, offices are. And this is on the southern side of Commerce Drive, also owned by L'Oreal. There's an existing parking lot on the site. Rest of the site is pervious, maintained lawn. There's an existing buffer, berm, and landscape along the northwest portion or along Dahmer Road. And there's also a 50-foot drainage easement along the southerly property line, as well as a as part of the, I think, part of the original approval, a 75-foot landscape buffer, which is also along the southerly property line. From what I can tell, the parking lot was, I believe, approved in 1999 and installed shortly thereafter. The landscaping, that was...
And Craig, not to interrupt you, but this proposal will not interfere with the parking lot, is that correct?
Correct.
The parking lot remains as is.
Correct.
All right, go on.
Well, you're asking for the existing, so. I believe the landscaping was part of an approval before 1999, possibly with the original construction of L'Oreal. So that is the existing conditions.
And what are we proposing tonight?
We are proposing a ground-mounted solar array. As you can see, it's in the maintained lawn area that I described before. The plans before you had the landscape buffer within the 50-foot drainage easement. We've had further discussions with your staff and understand that. Well, I guess I'll present that as we get into the reports, and I can further discuss the changes we made to enhance and kind of address the concerns that your staff have had.
Well, let's get to that. You did have discussions with the staff regarding these plans that have been submitted.
Right.
Have we prepared a proposed modification of the plans?
Yes. As I said, the plan before you is the submitted plan, which is an overlay. If I pull this overlay back, this is the revised plan. Essentially, the only difference from the submitted plan to the revised is one row of solar panels has been removed, and all the landscaping that was proposed in the 50-foot drainage easement has been revised to be outside of that drainage easement and essentially supplement the existing trees that are there along the southerly boundary.
Okay. All right. Now, have you had the opportunity to review the staff reports that were issued in this matter?
Yes.
Okay. I'm first going to refer you and the board to Carl Hauk, the Assistant Township Engineer's September 13th, 2012 report, and more specifically his general review comments. You familiar with that report?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell this board that we have complied with or will comply with items 1, 6? There's been a grant of a...
Well, just tell us what you can't comply with, Frank, and if there's an issue, we can have that discussion then.
Okay, that's fine. Do you want to discuss item 2, the grading issue?
That's just a clarification that there will be no grading associated with the installation.
Yeah, that's fine. If there's no grading, there's no stormwater required then.
Right.
That's
Okay, items 3 and 4, you want to discuss that?
We intend to have them as part of the building permit package, should the application be approved. So
All right,
when GeoPeak submits their building permit plans, that information will be on there.
All right, item 7,
7,
environmental.
again, we're asking for a waiver of that. As I described, the solar panels are completely within a maintained lawn area and will be fenced, so I don't see the need for any, there's no disturbance to any environmental matters. So that's the reason we're asking for the waiver.
All right, so we're asking the board to waive a report. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
Okay.
if I could clarify that as well, I think your proposal has changed a
Correct.
bit since you initially submitted, because initially you were going to be putting plantings within the wetlands area and the wetlands transition area. With this proposal, with this proposed change, you're not doing that, you're
Correct.
not changing that at all.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Item number 9, conservation monuments.
As part of the LOI that we received in 2010, we were to file a conservation easement, so that will be taken care of.
Okay, so it's our intention, we'll supply the
Yes.
LOI to the board, but it's our intention to follow the state regulations with respect to a conservation easement filing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Item number 9. Item 15, are there any easements that affect this property? You just went over them.
As I described, the only easement on the subject property is the 50-foot drainage easement along the southerly property line.
All right, and the source of that easement, I think, is the filed map in this matter?
Yeah, it was the original industrial subdivision that created Commerce Drive. I believe it was Murray. That drainage easement was on the filed map for that subdivision.
All right,
But there is no filed deed. It's just shown on the filed map.
All right, so there is no file deed you were able to find on that.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. And then, of course, the NJDEP regulated area will provide. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. Did you have an opportunity to review Mark Healy's memorandum?
yes.
All right, you want to address the landscaping and buffer issues and requirements?
Again, with the enhancements, we believe that, I think Mark has said that the original plan met the landscaping and buffer requirements. We have reviewed the revised plan, and we believe that between the existing buffer that exists out there and the additional plantings that we have installed or proposed, meet the landscaping and buffer requirements.
Craig, are the numbers in Mark's report still accurate regardless of the location of the trees?
I can go through that. To the west, in his paragraph, the earth and berming would remain in place and would vast majority of the existing landscape buffer. Instead of 2 deciduous trees and 1 evergreen would be removed, it would be 1 deciduous tree will be removed in the revised plan. And then to the south, where
And
it's,
the new landscaping in this area would consist of 4 evergreen and 2 deciduous placed in the southwest corner where a gap currently exists? That's still true?
yes,
Okay. So that basically the berm that you see today facing Dahmer, the residences on Dahmer, would essentially remain almost untouched.
exactly, yes.
Okay, go ahead to the south.
To the south, where it says 27 of the 39 existing trees will be removed, only 9 trees will be removed.
Okay.
And then 30 proposed new trees.
Okay, so you're actually planning more than are going to be removed?
Right.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I had the opportunity to review the revised plans beforehand. Along the Dahmer Road side, they're required to have 37 trees, and there are about 70 existing. So that berm with the landscaping vastly exceeds the minimum buffer requirements. And then along the south side, they're required to have 46 trees. There are 33 existing proposed to remain and 30 additional proposed. So that's a total of 63. So again, 63 total where 46 are required. And the minimum requirement of the size is 3 feet. So, you know, the trees that are there now,
Right.
they are much, much bigger than 3 feet in height. And the proposed trees, they're proposing a total of 30. Each of them are 6 to 8 feet in height.
Right.
So I think just by the sheer numbers, they vastly exceed the buffer
Yeah,
requirements.
and that's good, because, I mean, you can tell from the aerial that, so you know that to the south there is a relatively new development, and so it's, the screening there is not very robust. You can see that from the aerial, the difference between the buffer on Dahmer versus the buffer against that house at the end of that cul-de-sac. So to enhance that essentially would be a good thing.
Right, and I think,
regardless.
just one clarification, the buffer that you see on the residential side, that was probably 2007-ish. When
Yeah.
I was out there in the cul-de-sac the other day, it's substantially grown in. I
Yeah.
mean, it's tough to see the site from not the cul-de-sac in the picture, but the one just outside of it.
Right.
And that's
Right, because that
conservation
actually
easement.
used to be part of a farm, and
Right.
so when that did not get developed as part of that more recent development, it's essentially gone into natural
Right, and
succession.
that's a conservation easement as well.
And lastly, the other thing to note too is that the width of the buffer is 50 feet, and your buffer is actually a width of 75 feet. Is that correct with the
The
50
revised
feet?
would be closer to 60 feet.
60 feet,
Right.
okay.
Because it's an additional 10 feet beyond the 50-foot drainage.
Beyond, okay, all right, so it's 60 feet is proposed?
Right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, what would the ground surface be under the panels?
It's going to continue to be the lawn that is out there.
Okay, and generally it'd be ryegrass?
Right, yes.
Okay, all right. Now, with respect to portions of item number 5, there's a question on the building height. What's the building height of the solar panels?
The comments that are on there, I think what happened was from the last approval when we did the warehouse on the main site, we kind of took the zoning data and transferred it over. And then what happens, we we split the two lots, so it essentially needs to be updated. I think we just missed a couple things in the submission.
Yeah, I think 5, 6, and 7 are pretty much,
Right.
I assume you'll just take care of those on the
Right,
plan.
but just so the board knows, the top of the solar panels will be approximately 5 feet high, and the proposed fence would be 7 feet high, so the top of the panels would be less.
8 or 7?
7.
Will you say,
There's, the detail shows 7, the note shows 8, but it's going to be 7.
All right, so proposal is for a 7-foot fence,
Yes.
and the panels extend, the highest extent would be 5 feet. Is
Right.
that correct?
Is that 7-foot fence for security or for decoration or what?
I think it's more security than anything else.
So when you say decorative metal fence, what is exactly that?
Well, if you were to go out and to the site on the main facility side, they have a specific fence, which is the decorative fence. They want to be consistent with the rest of their property. So it is a decorative fence, although it's more security.
Is it, from what I recall from the detail, it's kind of like is an aluminum fence that kind of looks like a wrought iron?
Exactly.
Black?
Yep.
Okay.
And so that's placed inside of the landscaping?
Yes,
So the landscaping is
Well,
outside of the
outside.
fence? Okay.
correct.
All right.
Would
I'm
you-
just trying to get a picture of what people will see.
All right, what's the status of outside agency approvals?
We have received comments from the Soil Conservation District, which is just adding additional items. We have not heard from Somerset County yet. We have not heard from the Canal Commission yet.
All right. And I can report to the board, and you have it in your packet. The Health Department has no objections, DPW has no comments, the zoning officer indicates there's no variances needed, and fire prevention has no objections. I have no further questions of Mr. Stiers.
Board members?
yeah, I have one question, if I may.
Jim, go ahead.
The thing that doesn't seem to be on the plan, and I don't know, maybe it's something I'm missing, you have 2 inverters, which are going to transmit the power, change it from DC to AC. How are you transmitting that? Does it go to the plant? Does it go to the grid? And is there any constructions that are going to be required? Do we have to open the road? I mean, there's no details on the drawing, so I have no idea how
Right,
you're
and
doing that.
those details are on the GeoPeak plans, but also, they have also provided to me, there's going to be a series of poles that take it from this site
To the plant or to the grid?
around the back of the plant
Mm-hmm.
and into the building. So
Oh,
it's not
okay.
going to the grid, it's going to
Going
serve
into the building, okay.
Yes.
All right. But you're going to have a series of poles?
Yes,
Okay.
so they would go along.
They'll be on the opposite side of the street? In other words, we'll
Right.
go across the street?
Yes.
Overhead?
Yes,
And then around the back of the
around
building
the
into the back?
and into the back.
Okay.
And you said across the street, meaning across Commerce?
Yeah, they'll have to cross
Right.
Commerce.
That would be Lot 10.32,
They would
Craig?
come across Commerce and then continue up along the edge of the parking lot, around the back of the building, and then in.
Okay.
Again, so we don't get into a big discussion, poles, how high? No higher than the building? I mean,
25 feet,
how much?
25 feet.
25?
Right.
Okay.
I have 2 quick questions. The inverters, I would like to see the security fence go around those also. It seems not to go around them right now.
Okay.
And I don't see any man gates in the fencing. Where would the man gates be located?
I would have to work that out with GeoPeak,
Okay,
but I'm sure that would be part of the building permit stage as well.
thank you.
Anything else from the board? Okay, if not, we can have a motion to open to the public.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So the meeting is now open to the public on this topic. If you wish to speak, just come forward to the microphone, give your name and address, and let us know what's on your mind. You have a taker? You can use that microphone, that's fine.
Hello, my name is Roman Telichka. I live at 67 Dahmer Road, so I'm at the, I guess, the southern boundary of Commerce and Dahmer. 2 points. One is, the trees, I think Mr. Neely was talking about how many trees, and that the GOP and L'Oreal were way above what the normal, tree limit is, et cetera. From different vantage points along Dahmer, you can see right through the parking lot. So you can quote 30 trees, 50 trees, whatever trees you want, but you can see along the edge of the road if you're walking right through the trees, right into the parking lot. That's number one. Number two, I did have a question for you in terms of how many poles are going to be there, the 25-foot poles? 7. Okay. The other thing is, anybody want to tell the audience here in terms of the neighbors, what do you think of the property values? What's going to happen to those 5 years down the road when I'm trying to sell my house? In terms of, I got 100 panels across the street from me, fenced in, supposedly not causing any health concerns, but yet you hear in a paper about health concerns in Parsippany, about, panels that are going up, et cetera.
Well, I can tell you that in the last 4 or 5 years, we've had hundreds of installations of these type in the township, and we have not had any issue with any real estate agent or anyone else with any property values. So that's all I can tell you.
Well, properties aren't being sold readily as they were a couple of years ago, so I don't know that that's a good.
I'm just giving you the information that I have.
I understand. I just throw it out. I don't expect anybody to give me an answer because nobody can. My point is that for some, it's an eyesore, and you can block it as much as you want, but the fact that they're there, I think, is going to have an effect on my property value.
I think the technical answer, or the real answer, is that this is an M2 zone. It's a light industrial zone. By the municipal land use law, which is the law from the state that gives the township the ability to zone, that law says that solar panels are permitted use in an industrial zone. So, and then they're here proposing a permitted use. So just so you know, the board can't just say no. What the board can do is, if you have concerns about screening, so when I mentioned the screening, just the strict numbers, they comply.
Mr. Healy, I understand.
No, and if I can finish
Is
that.
it Healy or Neely?
Healy,
I
yes.
can't read. Thank you.
Now, but if you're raising issues of if there are certain gaps in the buffering, I think that's something that can be brought to the applicant's attention and something that the board can work out with the applicant if there's some certain, I'm looking at that plan, and I drove, when I reviewed this, that's about, maybe if you're sitting in your front lawn and you're looking in certain angles, you can see through. When you drive down there, with the berming, that's about as dense of a buffer as you're going to get.
And how fast are you going down there? Like 30
Sir,
miles an hour, right?
Sir.
So, well, hold on a second. Well,
I was speaking.
And you asked me a question. If you're sitting in your lawn and you're looking across the street, yes. The other part of that is that if you're in my house, which is right on the corner of Commerce and Dahmer, and I brought it up 2 years ago, cars driving up that road, their lights shine directly into my house. When L'Oreal was here, I came, I told them what the issue was. They have every right to build solar panels. I have every right to be here and tell you how I feel about the solar panels across the street from my house, because I, in fact, do think that they're going to devalue the value of my house.
And what I'm trying to do, sir, is trying to help you and help the board address the issues that you have. Bringing up issues like property values, we understand your concern, but again, this is a permitted use, and it's a site plan application for that. We can't just turn it down because we don't like it. But what we can do is, again, if you have concerns about the buffering, you're saying it's not adequate in certain locations, the board could, if it chose, impose that as a condition that the applicant needs to investigate that. Staff will have to enforce that and see if there's some situation, some places along that berm where they have to fill it in. Those are the type issues that the board is talking about tonight.
I understand that. I appreciate you pointing that out. My concern is my home, the value of my home, and I appreciate the fact that they're going to save some money on putting in solar panels. My concern is for my family and my home value. And the question I have is, by putting these solar panels in, they have every right to do that. With 5 years, when I go to sell my house, am I going to get dinged because L'Oreal is saving a couple of pennies and have 100 solar panels in their backyard? That building affects my property value. That's why I'm here.
Well, I think as Mark pointed out, that they're putting in something that is much less of an issue than what they could put in. I mean, they could put in a 50-foot tall building there that would much more adversely affect your property value. So what Mark is saying is that everyone understands your issue, but if you want to help with that issue, if there's something that you want to say to the board that you think there needs to be an 8-foot tree, at this corner, tell the board, and they'll consider that.
Vincent, I was here 2 years ago when L'Oreal proposed the parking lot change. We had a hearing, and I came to this board, and I told you what my issues were. My issues were, you know what, in the summertime, there's a lot of noise, parking lot, it's crazy. Wintertime, it's not so bad. Cars driving up that driveway, there's no buffer between Commerce and Dahmer. There's a gap, right? Those lights are shining in my house.
Yeah, I think that, looking at the aerial, I think that gap aligns with, must be what the emergency vehicle access is there, because it's essentially looks like it's either grass pavers, is that right?
Yes.
And it's a bollard and chain, so that's unfortunately never going to be bermed in, or because it's the emergency access, but I would say that maybe what we can do is maybe try to work out, filling in some of the gaps if we can. The biggest gap you're already proposing to fill in, I see it from the aerial here. I don't know that there's too many more, being that I live fairly close to there. But I think, sir, the honest answer is that nobody can predict what'll happen to property values, but we appreciate your comments. Yeah.
That road should have been cut through. I live on Main Street. I live on
No, you don't.
Sorry.
Hi, my name is Raj Mehta. I'm at 65.
Could you speak into the mic, please, so we can pick it up on the...
Indeed.
Thank you.
My name is Raj Mehta, and I'm at 65 Dahmer Road, which is actually directly across from the gap that was just being referred to. And while there is a buffer that probably protects some of the light, my neighbor, while he sees the lights from the cars as they move into the parking lot, I'm right across the street where, like you said, is that emergency access. The esteemed gentleman over here mentioned a nicely landscaped lawn and well-maintained lawn. Well, I don't know what time of the year he's ever visited that, but that lawn is so full of weeds, and those weeds spread right across to all of our yards. We're spending hundreds and thousands of dollars every year trying to get rid of those weeds. Not to mention the fact where the emergency access is, there is a chain which is constantly removed, and there are trucks. There is no sign to indicate to the trucks that there is no entrance to L'Oreal via Dahmer Road. So they take the chain out. They almost bring those huge poles down, knocking them down at 3 and 4 in the morning, trying to get through because they don't know how to get across to L'Oreal from Commerce Drive on the other side. And when they can't, they go across the lawn, they bring the chain down, they go across the lawn, they violate every traffic rule there is, or that should be set. Not to mention, I can't tell you how many safety regulations. And with regards to the other side of Commerce, I don't know what landscape they're referring to because there's only one tree over there and everything else is just a jungle and a real eyesore. If anyone was to look in there, they'd just see a whole lot of dumped stuff in there. I wish somebody would take care of those issues also. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if any client knows of any, I mean, I don't, but I don't know, but, there is a bollard and chain there. If they're taking that down and trucks are going in that way because they don't know to go around to, Clyde or whatever, then that's a problem. So, just, I don't want anybody sworn in or anything, but just if your client could check into that and, could put a do not enter sign or something like that and, enforce that. Okay, we'll follow up on that, definitely.
Yeah, my client indicated that he'll take care of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my name is Winston Belmar. I live at 69 Dahmer Road, directly to the south of the installation we're talking about. I'm very concerned about the safety aspect. I overheard that there were no comments from the Department of Health EPA. I think the history on this technology is still out there. It's new, it's evolving. And the board needs to research a little bit more in terms of the longer-term effects, in terms of health. Are there any radiation effects? Noise effects, the decibel level, from an engineering perspective. Were these issues addressed in the study? I must admit that I did not. Roman was here 2 years ago, but this was totally unaware to me. I got this notice about 2 weeks ago. So I think it's unsightly. Where I work in Parsippany, there's a structure, a garage structure, and it's very unsightly to the adjacent buildings. I think also, as you indicated, from a historical perspective on the input on resale value, you only have about 5 years. But I think from a due diligence perspective, what should have been done, a survey should be conducted as to other residential areas with similar infrastructure. If there were any sort of historical database or review that would show a trend in terms of resale value, that's important to the resident, particularly those who are directly affected by this installation. I understand it's an M2 zone, and that's a priority. But I think the board needs to, again, I think, revisit it or look at it from the perspective of the unsightliness of this installation.
Yeah, just realize that the board really can't do that. It's a permitted use, and if you have something that you can say, to affect how the site plan is adding some buffering or moving something here, but the board can't consider that.
Yeah,
that's not something that's the state has already made a determination that this is permitted. We've made a determination it's permitted. We can't change that tonight. If there's something that you think that can help you, that you perceive there may be an adverse effect, you should tell the board tonight. Telling them that, you think and I understand your issue, but the board can't consider that.
Okay. I'm talking about a waiver, okay? And I think the application here is for a waiver. And how...
No, there's no waivers tonight.
No waivers.
There's no variance or waivers. It's a permitted use. It's a site plan.
The site plan. But I think when you look at it, the fence is 7 foot tall. That is really enclosing the solar cells, which is at a height of 5 feet. When a couple of years, 2 or 3 years down the road, a potential buyer looks at the potential resident or the adjacencies, not only from ground level, they look at it particularly from a higher level. And that's where the unsightliness of this overall structure comes into place.
Yeah, I think in that whole general theme, you and the last speaker raised about unsightliness. I think you have to, we're going to have a buffer of trees. Certainly anything at ground level you're not going to see. The fence, according to your testimony, is going to be inside that buffer. So you're not even going to see the fence. And then we're adding to the existing buffer. And significantly, is there a possibility that from the second story, or if you were to get on the roof of your house, that you would look down over these trees and see it? There is. But I
can see the parking lot from my...
yeah, exactly. And,
Yeah.
Man, you'd have to have a redwood forest to be able to not see that. So, I don't know. I wouldn't know how to mitigate that. I know nothing about, in terms of the safety of solar panels or anything like that.
I don't know either.
I don't think this board can speak to it. I know for a fact that there's a couple of houses on Margaret that have solar panels. So, I mean, I know it's not a huge ground-mounted array,
Yeah.
but I mean, if you were concerned, you know, then I think those neighbors of those people who had put solar panels put on their house would probably, you know, even though there's no hearing for that, would raise a fuss or whatever. So, I mean,
you're looking at concentration levels.
yeah, and
When you're
it's
looking at-
nothing that we have any data to, you know,
What did EPA
deal
say
with.
about this? I think I heard there were no comments from EPA.
No, the EPA is not involved in this.
No,
I mean, again,
our own health officer, health.
what it boils down to is, again, this is municipal land use law, the New Jersey municipal land use law. Again, the law that gives us the power to zone has essentially taken this issue away from us and has basically said, in industrial zones, solar panels are a permitted use. So going through an exercise of doing although they are legitimate concerns, there's no benefit to doing there's nothing, even if we did a survey of impact on property values or impact on health, this board has no authority to use that to deny this, because the state has already said, in industrial zones, you shall permit this. And then they have to come to the board to talk about issues like the location of the electrical poles and how you're going to screen it and things like that. That's what this board has the authority to do.
Who's responsible for the long-term risk?
Well, I would think.
The long-term what?
Excuse me, if you want to, it's important that if you want to continue speaking, to go up to the mic, only because it is a public record. So
I mean, I would just say that before anybody goes back to the mic, which you're certainly entitled to do, this board can't make those determinations for the reasons that Mark has outlined and Vince has outlined. I mean, you could make whatever case you want. It's speculative anyway. But even if it weren't speculative, you know, it's out of our hands because the state says this is an inherently beneficial use. That removes any type of variance or any type of wiggle room the board would otherwise have to deny it. It's basically by law saying that it is an inherently beneficial use. And of course, as Mark said, permitted in the zone in which it's in.
Yeah, and actually it's two things. That the law says that it's an inherently beneficial use, and that applies if it's in a zone, if it was not in an industrial zone. But then the law also says specifically, in all industrial zones, solar panels are a permitted use, period. So it basically takes our ability, we can't even have in our zone, solar panels are prohibited. We can't do that.
I think we all here understand that L'Oreal has rights, and they have the right to put up a 100-foot building and solar panels, et cetera. But again, I go back to 2 years ago when the same issues, go back to the notes, the same issues were brought up. There were trucks driving through that road, you know, and there's no reason, I'm not bad-mouthing L'Oreal, et cetera, but they could have done something about that then. They haven't, as far as I know. There was the berms, et cetera, the lights coming into my house, that was brought up. They could have done something then, but they didn't, right? The landscaping over there was, the trees were a little bit less robust, if you will, et cetera. Nothing was done with that either. Now, they don't have to do that, but we're their neighbors, right? They wanted to build something there. We were here to kind of discuss it, if you will. Nothing was done. So today you're coming before us to say, we have this right, we're going to do this, what are your concerns? We just told you our concerns.
Well, I think what you need to do is, that we understand your concerns, but if there's a specific recommendation that you want to say, we need to put this tree here, or we need to do this, they're here now. The board's listening. The concerns are one thing. How do you want this board to help you deal with those concerns? If you want them to say, you know, you need to plant a 10-foot buffer for this 50 feet there, tell them, we'll have the discussion with the board. So tell us how you want us to help you, and they'll ask the applicant to do so.
Okay, well, number one, this is going to happen no matter what, as far as I can see. So number one is, during the construction, have the trucks go on Commerce Road, not on Dahmer, where you have kids, where you have school buses coming through every day, et cetera. That's number one. Number two is, close that road, right? I know it's an emergency lane road. How about a little sign, how about a little push from our government to the police, right down the block here, to have a sign there to say, hey, go around, and have a sign there that says no pass-through here. That sign's been down for 5 years. I've called the police 10 times, nothing. I've come here, nothing. All right, so that's number one. Number two is, you're going to put a buffer? Okay, before you put a buffer, why don't you ask a couple of landscapers that we know, instead of, well, you know, we got an 8-foot tree, it's going to grow X. Well, why not put a 10-foot fence around if that's going to cover is that going to be that much more money as opposed to a 7-foot fence? I mean, I don't know if the right number is 8, 9, or 10, right? But my point is that the less sightly it is, the better, right? So we want to match the other fence on the other side. Well, how about let's make it the right height so we don't see it?
Well, that fence that you're proposing, that's not a screening fence, correct?
It's an open fence. It looks like a wrought iron fence.
So it looks like a wrought iron fence. So
Exactly.
the right height is almost moot, because in a perfect world, your landscaping is going to hide the fence.
Correct. Okay.
So a tree is going to be bigger than 7, 8, or 10 feet.
All right, Mike, sorry, just, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was sitting next to Bob over there from okay. So he was showing me a picture of the potential fence. If you take a look at the picture that the neighbors had just seen, it was a screen fence. So if that wasn't just brought up, we're all walking out of here thinking that that's a screen fence where you can't see through.
Okay, if that needs to be clarified, then let's have the applicant clarify it. That's what you're here to do.
We're going on what was on the
Yeah,
submitted plan,
it
so
was,
if the applicant intends something
the
different.
testimony was that it would be a continuation of the fence that was already on the property, which is not a screening type fence. If it is a screening type fence, let's get can you just check with your client? Yes. Greg?
What is the fence we're proposing, just so it's clear?
On sheet 3 of 3, it shows ornamental decorative fence detail, which is the exact same detail we used for the L'Oreal extension 4 years ago.
And again, the fence is inside of the trees, is that correct?
Is there any reason why you couldn't propose a solid fence? Then at least if there's, this gentleman mentioned that there might be some gaps in the existing, and then at least if there's a fence that would be solid, that would block the view entirely. Is there any reason why it couldn't be a solid fence?
I don't see why not. I mean, the other thing is to supplement, like you said, on the landscaping on the west side, whether it's filling in the gaps on the berm or putting landscaping in front of the fencing.
I don't know how the board feels, but that's...
The landscaping should be in front of the fence.
Yeah, the landscaping's in front, but what we've heard...
A fence is far more unsightly. I mean, I would rather live across the street from a buffer of trees than a fence in front of a buffer of trees. That's kind of just dumb. You can put the fence inside the trees, none outside.
No, I'm not proposing to put it on the outside. What I'm saying is leave it at the current location, just make it a solid fence.
What fence are we having? I mean, I don't care what the answer is. Well, maybe I do, but I just want to know the answer, because it seems like GOP guy over there is talking to your neighbors and saying it's going to be a screening fence, and when you're testifying it's going to...
Well, I mean, right now, it's like I said, the wrought iron fence, but I think what GOP has said is on that west side, they could put a fence up that has screening in it. So I guess that would be the fabric as well.
Your client has no objection to doing that, if that's what the...
No objection.
I mean... The buffer is going to be outside the fence, but if the neighbors prefer a screening fence as a second means of screening, so that if the panels are 5 foot high and you put a 7-foot fence, but the fence is a screening fence, then now any gaps you're not going to worry about as much, because it's going to be screened by the fence. You may see the fence, but you won't see the solar panels. Hopefully you won't even see the fence, but if there's a gap, and, you know, as trees grow, they lose lower branches, you're gonna have gaps come in, which is what's happening in that berm now. You know where I live right over on Napodi. I know this, I know it like the back of my hand. I drive down there every day. I know there are gaps, but, because the landscaping is mature and branches have been lost. So that will happen over time with the best of landscape.
Good.
What would you guys prefer? Would you prefer, if you're the spokesman, I don't know, would you prefer a screening fence, or would you applicants willing to do whatever you want?
Well, I think a screen works better because I think the concern was unsightliness, right?
Then a screening fence it shall be. So we'll put a screening fence around the solar field, the existing fence, whatever it is, chain link or wrought iron looking like, around the rest of L'Oreal's property is as it is, can stay, and we'll have our buffer. Fair? We already got L'Oreal to agree that they're gonna put a do not enter sign, they're gonna look into the bollards so that your trucks aren't coming through. You've gotten feedback that during construction of the solar panels, access of the trucks delivering panels or the workers shall come through the normal Commerce Drive access. And hopefully that does the trick.
Now, the trees are going to be 6 to 8 feet in height, and they're going to be evergreen?
Yes.
And we will work with Mr. Healy with respect to that.
So it's a screen fence around the entire,
Solar field.
Well, at a minimum, I think that...
At a minimum, you're south and...
South and west.
Yeah.
just the Dahmer side?
I mean,
Well, I mean, then you're gonna have your neighbor on the other side.
Well,
of that
how about
building.
the south and the west?
Yeah, I think that's all that's
Yeah,
needed,
the
really.
south-
So along Commerce, it's going to stay wrought iron, and along the,
Yes, the abutting, yes,
anything that butts residential.
yes. How about that?
Just to be clear on another issue the gentleman brought up, I'm not sure that there's a solution. And I understand, I do understand, but I'm not sure how much of the effect is. The lights coming down the driveway, coming down Commerce that go across Dahmer because of the gap in the buffering due to the fact that it's an emergency exit.
Yeah, well, it's not just...
That's not going to go away, so...
No, it's not going to go away, and the reason is that it's not just a gap in their own buffer. It's not even L'Oreal's property.
Right, it's a
I mean,
right-of-way.
that's actually a right-of-way.
Okay.
It's part of Commerce. Commerce physically ends, and then I guess it becomes,
Well, the other...
grass pavers, but it's physically the right-of-way, so L'Oreal couldn't put buffering there if they wanted to.
The other comment, though, I was going to make is that has to be a minimal issue because the entrance to the driveway is quite a ways off of that end of that dead end. I mean, there's not an awful lot of reason for anybody to be even driving down that street. And since we're just putting toward Dahmer, you follow what I'm saying? The cars with lights are going to turn into the driveway, into the parking lot.
Exactly.
There's no reason for them to go the rest of the way down to the end of that paved portion.
You think
And then
that?
putting up a fence where you're putting it up should eliminate any issues in the parking lot with lights. So I don't know how much further you
Well,
can go.
I don't think you can do anything else. You know, as someone, like I said, who lives close, but clearly not within the 200-foot notification area, otherwise I wouldn't be up here. Yeah, I mean, cars, speaking from personal experience, cars, especially if they're unfamiliar with the site, will go past those driveways, hoping that there might be another driveway closer to where they want to go or whatever. It's not a common, but it does happen. Or people go out thinking that that's an egress and only to find that it's not, they turn around. That happens. I know that for a fact. So, yeah, I mean, but you're right, there's nothing you can do about it so much because it's an emergency exit. But what I would like to see is anybody who's trying to use the emergency exit as their de facto exit would be thwarted in that.
But having...
One other thing, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Bob. Although, hold on a second. Does anybody else from the public want to speak? Let's, since we're still in public, let's go with that. And then hold your comments to the end, because we're still in public. I like to try to address things in real time, but if we're going to get into a board
Good
discussion.
evening. My name is Peggy Cesar. I live at 10 Dutch Road. I'm here to support my neighbors on Dahmer Road and just give a little historical perspective, because I was here about, 25 years ago or so when they built this place. How many years ago they built L'Oreal and Cosmere. And I'm here with my neighbor Ray, who's on on Dahmer Road. And I just want to kind of say that we had a group about 35 residents at that time when they start building that.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, are we now into testimony?
No, 2 seconds. I'll be 2 seconds.
I thought we were questions, but I have no objection, but if she's going to make statements, maybe we ought to swear her in? Or is it, I don't know how the procedure...
Let's try to limit it to like this
I
application.
am. I'll be focused. Just to let you know, because some of the issues that were brought up were issues that we had years ago. And it was the Commerce Drive with that chain. And it was my neighbors, and with the support of the planning board, they were going to make that a road with the trucks going down Dahmer to go into L'Oreal. And my group of residents and neighbors stopped that because it was so unsafe. But the point I'm trying to make is that L'Oreal, Cosmere, whatever, is very untrustworthy when it comes to landscaping. When they first built that, and my neighbor Ray, whose house is across from the older section, it is a mess. There's gaps there. They don't maintain the landscaping. So they're telling you in this new section, and all these people with this beautiful buffer and all these size trees, they die, they don't replace them. And we have experienced that over the years. You can see that in the older section. And we were very adamant about that. I just don't want evergreen trees. I want shrubs, flowering shrubs, something in between. And they've died, and they don't replace it. It may look terrific from the L'Oreal side, but from the Dahmer side facing L'Oreal, it looks horrible. So I'm just letting you know, don't go with this landscaping, because there has to be some monitoring of that. And that's what I just wanted to say, that because we were here from the beginning with this company, and they don't monitor and maintain things. That's all I wanted to say.
Mm-hmm. Let me just address that comment, though, because this is not an unusual thing. The monitoring you speak about, really, you just did it. So it is true, Mark has told me, when I wear my Shade Tree Commission hat, that a site plan with landscaping on it should always have that landscaping on it. And as it matures and or dies, it needs to be replaced so that at any given time, zoning or engineering could go to the site and say, you need to replant this because that tree that was here is not here for whatever the reason. But that also, in a town this size, the enforcement, unfortunately, from staff is just not going to be there without people like you telling them. So if you notice something like that, I've just dealt with it with the ShopRite site. There's somebody on my Shade Tree Commission who lives in the ShopRite site, across from ShopRite. She's brought it up, the fact that, and Mark's enforcing it, that these trees need to be replanted. So, if that happens, bring it up to Mark or Vince, zoning or engineering, and let them know where it is. And somebody can go out there and look at this plan 20 years from now, and if the trees aren't there, can make L'Oreal replace or replant them. Can't make them plant more, but they can plant what's on the plan. So, just so you know. Sir.
Hi, I'm Ray Notariani. I was here before all of this building ever started, so thanks to Peg for our support. When it all started, just brief history of when it all started, Ellen Ritchie was here, and she said that it was really poor planning to put this industrial, whatever you call it, this industrial zone between all of this residential zone and farmland. So we've been stuck with this zoning, all the while here. But just to go back up to date now, if we agreed on a 7-foot fence, cyclone fence with the slats in it, that should take care of the unsightly. Let's face it, we don't want to look at all those things. We want to not see them at all. So you guys addressed that, and I think we got that pretty straightened out. But I do live on right smack across the street from the original building. And our original plan, our thoughts were we liked the natural look. That was there already. And so we came to agreements. They were going to dress it up a little bit, there was azaleas planted there and everything. And initially, we really couldn't see through, you know, underneath the trees and through where all this, so I'll go on. What happens is a lot of the trees died, and in the storms, and I've been retired for 15 years, so I'm always outside. So I pick up the branches, I throw it, you know, outside where you can see them. And I would like to propose to you that when the trees grow, and they keep growing. I have trees on my property. I have to trim them all the time. These trees have never been trimmed. So as a result of this big canopy of trees on the top, anything that was under the trees died because the sun couldn't get to them. So they all died. So I'm hoping that you can help me out in this part, because something should be done. And as far as that cyclone fence, we do see the trees. Where the building is, there's parking spots facing my house, and we do see the headlights from there. And if that cyclone fence could be continued along in front of my house, that would be really nice.
I think as the chairman said, and that there's a buffer along Dahmer on the south side of Commerce, and there's also supposed to be one. I think you're more specifically talking about between the building itself and Dahmer.
Correct.
And you were in the office the other day explaining that, and I have sent an email to L'Oreal about that issue. So I think, as the chairman said, you've notified us and your neighbors have notified us. It seems like, frankly, over time, the landscaping was put in, and over time it's died, hasn't been replaced. And that L'Oreal needs to do something to bring their landscaping, their buffering, more into compliance with the approved landscaping plan.
Okay.
And we'll look into that for you.
But so that we won't have any more problems with the lights in the parking lot. Just to give you an instance, during the summer we had this noise issue. They had a new machine up there, and I called L'Oreal. I says, rather than go to the town, I'd like to see if we can resolve this. Says there's some loud noise coming from your building, et cetera, et cetera. So Mr. Reynolds, I don't know what his name was, but he went up there, he called me back, he says, yes, we found something wrong, and we fixed it. There is still a lot of noise coming from that place. But that problem was resolved. So I'm asking that that fence be extended into the old section to really help out with the lights, the headlights from the parking lot that face my house. Okay? Can we get that? Can we get a response on that?
I mean, it's not directly related to this real application and where they're doing in this part of the property. It's a little hard for me to enforce, but I will, appeal that, I don't know whether it's a matter of replacing the fence or just weaving slats through what's there now, or I don't know, but I'll just appeal that, if there's any way to screen that part of Dahmer, that would be great. I have. All right. I don't know.
Well, can you show us on the map?
My house sort of off the map.
Yeah, it's on the other side.
It's up here.
Towards Dutch, right?
The northern end where the fire lane is.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, I guess we can just say that, we're aware of it, you'll take a look at it. I can't make it part of this resolution just because it doesn't, I have to deal with what's in this resolution, unfortunately.
All right, so what I have to do is just keep bugging them, saying, hey, these lights are bothering me, you got to do something about these lights.
Well, let's say this, hopefully you won't have to keep bugging them. We made the issue where you look into it, it's going to be from where the, your main building is, on the opposite side of the subject of this application. And, it's just a matter of, if they were doing something on that part of the property, it would be really easy for me to say, okay, boom, got to put the fence in. Since it's not that part of the property, my authority to do that, our authority as a board, is a little more limited. However, I will say that you've made your issue aware, and we'll strongly push that.
All right, the last thing I want to say is, with those lower plantings, the canopy and all the dead stuff on the bottom, the lower plantings should be shade-loving plants if you want them to live, and they have to be watered, because all the azaleas that were there and planted there, Jane Albanowski helped us with all the plantings, but she's not here anymore, and I mean, shade-loving plants is the only thing that's going to live, in the shade, so if you're going to plant something, that's what you got to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
This problem might be helped by enforcing the landscaping.
Well, that's what I think I'd said that before, which is they do have an approved landscape plan, and it sounds like over the 20 or 30 years since it was put in place, trees have died, and technically it may not be in compliance with that plan. So we can work with the applicant, and if there's a way to maybe tweak that plan and put it in a way that blocks the headlights, I think that's the avenue to do it, is conformance, enforcing conformance with the approved landscape plan.
Yeah, and let's make it clear, anytime that we've called the applicant and asked them to do something, they've immediately complied. So, I mean, the township is now aware, we'll work with them, and they've been very willing and able to comply in the past, and I'm sure they'll be willing to, as they've indicated tonight, to continue to comply.
And I think I said it before, Mr. Chairman, an email has already been sent.
Yeah.
Before the meeting.
Sorry. Well, I'm just about ready to close, Bill. Go.
Could you state your name again, please, for the record?
My name is Raj Mehta. I'm at 65 Dahmer, which is the house right across from where Commerce ends. And like I said, there's going to be very nice landscaping on the side where the solar panels are going up, but there's almost no landscaping. In fact, it's just a jungle on the other side. Again, I know this is not part of the project that's under consideration, but since they're looking into these issues, if they could look at landscaping on the opposite side of Commerce also.
No, that's exactly what we're talking about, is enforcing or cleaning up or updating the landscaping, in that area, and that's
on both sides of Commerce, right?
Yeah.
And that's all I'm requesting. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other comments from the public, I make a motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bob?
Just two quick things. The issue with the traffic on Commerce Street turning off Dahmer, I must be missing something, but that's gated with a chain. That has a lock, correct?
No, as a
According to the testimony, yes, it does. According to the testimony we've heard, apparently, in the middle of the night, and I don't know this personally, but that's what the resident said. They must pull that down.
Somebody should be ordered not to let people come in.
Or
that's simple.
Somehow breach it, come through, and then, I don't know.
Well, the other thing I could propose as a partial solution to those houses across the street from that driveway, if you think it's directly related to this application, we have in the past on the Board of Adjustment had an agreement between the homeowner and the applicant to do some plantings on the homeowner's property in the front yard, since it can't be done at the end of the driveway. Again, that's not a solution that's going to work overnight, because things have to grow. People have to agree to do it. You're asking an applicant to plant something on someone's property. I think we've done that with Somerset Run on occasion. That's the only thing I really think that could, in the long term, solve that particular part of the problem. We're not going to change the fire exit routes, and the house is there. The house is there. I mean, you either have to live with it or have a compromise of some sort. Planting on the homeowner's property has had some good effects in some cases. Might not work here, but I throw it out to you there.
I think that's a possible solution.
One comment before you do that. Damer Road, not Damer Road, Commerce Drive, originally in the master plan was to be cut through to Damer, and then when the residents came out, don't forget I was here for 30 years on the engineering side of the table, the compromise was reached that we would not cut the road through for the obvious reasons. I mean, Damer is a little road, and they were going to bring tractor trailers and all that business. At that point in time, the fire company wanted the bollards put up, and they actually had a plastic chain, if you could believe that, which was broken probably 15 times a day and twice on Sunday. People just drove through this plastic chain. They thought it was a way, as somebody raised before, they thought it was a means of egress or exit and egress to get in and out of the site. And people came down Damer Road, turned, and went through the fence. Eventually, I think it became a steel chain. I think it had a little padlock on it at one time. There was signage put up. So the ultimate result of this was it didn't work, and it has never really worked. And it wasn't there to stop headlights. I live on a street where the headlights, I'm on a T, and everybody comes down the street in front of my house. I see their lights because it shines right into my bedroom. But I can't do anything about that. I mean, that's just a street. That's the way it is. The only other thing you can do is put up a gate and give the fire company access to a gate that would say, I don't know, don't take it as gospel, but make a solid fence gate.
A chain link gate with a big.
No, well, or a chain link or something, at least wide enough for a fire truck to be able to use this concrete pavers under the grass there, and make it a gate. It'll be closed off. The lights won't go through the gate, and it'll be locked. And the only ones that can have access to it, either by cutting it with a bolt cutter or a key, is the fire company. So then nobody can get in and out of the place, and there'll be no headlights shining into the guy's window.
Yes.
Because even if you know Damer Road, those houses where these folks live, not Dutch Road, but the old houses, they're close to the road. There's really not a lot of places you're going to be able to plant anything. So if you put a fence up that was a legitimate gate with a lock on it, that would be a double swing gate. Just open it up. I mean, make it a solid gate, open it up, and that's the end of it.
No truck entrance sign on it.
Well, yeah, and nobody could get out because it's going to be permanently locked, and the only one that have access would be the fire company. Unless somebody takes a bolt cutter. I mean, there's always kind of wackos out there. To me, that could work. And it would solve the problem with the lights going in the man's windows. It would probably look like the entrance to a fort or something, but at least it would be there. That's just a suggestion.
Thanks, Jim. Ted?
Well, I hate to say this, but I don't think the fire companies would approve of that at all. They tend to want to have as rapid access as possible, and that doesn't include unlocking gates. I think perhaps we can explore this with John Houck, but over the years I've sat on a lot of applications that have the same sort of situation, and what the fire companies want is a chain that essentially they can break away with a fire truck, or at least there's some sort of lock that they can essentially unlock with a signal from
Yeah, there's
the
a Knox
truck.
box that they can unlock with the signal, yes.
Yeah, I think that's about the most we could have. I do think that, perhaps the applicant can hang a sign on the chain, making it very clear in very large letters, no entry, and on their side of it, no exit. I don't know, it won't be perfect in stopping people. I think it would discourage use of it, and I think if any of you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning because they're unlocking the gate to let somebody in, then you can call the police about it.
Well, why don't we make it an agreement that we'll check with? I think that's a good idea. Everybody has good ideas. I think we just have to check.
Yeah,
with John.
before you make the agreement, let me clarify something. If you go down the end of Smith Road, there is a gate, and it has a lock on it. And the fire company will use that, and that's the way they wanted it. So I'm not disputing it with the councilman, but we have gates in town that are locked, and the fire company either drives through them or cuts the lock.
No, there's siren-activated things and stuff that they can do.
And those places exist.
We'll just,
And the
we'll
fire company's
just,
never objected.
yeah, we'll just
Council of
talk
Fire
with John
Company.
House, whatever he wants and whatever the applicant's willing to do. Are there any other comments before we? Okay, listen, whoever makes the, motion for this, I have to caution you. Everything outside of that shaded area on Mark's map, and I just talked to our attorney, it can't be part of the resolution. The scope of the work that was tonight, the fence around the solar panels themselves, the landscaping around, that can all be germane to any motion. But this, the bollards, the chains, the fences, the gates, the landscaping, the azaleas, the whole thing, and that's not part of this, can't be part of this resolution because it's not part of what the applicant has brought before us tonight. Will they work it out? I'm sure they will. Have they heard us? I'm sure they have. But legally, that's not what we can do. So whoever makes the motion, confine it to the things that we've discussed tonight. I will say that. So with that, I'll entertain.
Any discussion?
If I could just summarize what I think are the germane conditions. I mean, the one would be that the screening fence along the south and west sides, which are the sides that adjoin the residential areas, that's going to be a solid screening fence. That the trucks that are bringing the materials in for this are only going to use Commerce Drive. That the applicant on the south side of Commerce is going to look to see if there's some gaps that maybe could be filled in the existing buffer. And they're going to put up signs. I don't think we're going to ask them to do anything physical in the right-of-way, but put up signs, do not enter, no, in the end of Commerce Drive.
Well, that
I think putting traffic signs,
Well, I mean, that whole thing is sort of not, I mean, their scope of their work is not going into the emergency access. So I think that whatever happens there is sort of going to be contingent upon whatever gate they choose. If indeed, as Jim says, the fire department will accept a gate, an actual gate, I know that they can be siren activated. I learned a lot of this when Joe Danielson was on the board, but whatever the state of the art is now, and they'll allow that, we can work it out with the applicant. It just can't be part of this motion because it's not in the scope of the work that they're doing on that side of the, that side of the.
So do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve it with all the germane changes that have been mentioned, and that, that the applicant will be working with our boards with anything else.
Second.
Councilman Chase?
I really would like, I know, Mike, you've said we can't absolutely enforce this. I'd like to have something to the effect of applicant will consult with the Director of Fire Protection to determine whether any closure of Commerce Drive more discouraging to use other than emergency can be put in place, which would still meet fire safety needs. It's just asking them to meet with John House and see whether they can do a little more there. I don't think he's going to buy a gate, but perhaps, as you say, a Knox box, I think, which I guess is something that the fire companies can open, but it's more than a padlock. But I know you don't.
I mean, I think the way to enforce, like, the landscaping issue, is exactly what Mark said. It's already can be done. It doesn't need to be done as part of this application. I'm not sure how to enforce this, since it's not exactly part of this application, other than to say that, if fire prevention and, planning and zoning think that maybe this situation is not ideal, and would like to discuss it with the applicant to come up with not only a safer, but a better, for the neighbors in terms of screening, way to gate off that emergency access, it could be done outside of this application.
And I think, Mike, Frank would tell you that the applicant has, every time we've gone to them and asked them for something, and in 8 years, I've asked them for 20 things, and they've done all 20 of them. So I would think that the applicant, and I think Frank would indicate on the record, that they'd be willing to work with John House to, am I correct, Frank?
Yes, outside the scope of a resolution, we absolutely will be willing to work with John House.
Okay, so we can put it in the minutes, but not in the resolution. Okay. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay, that's, I guess, is the best we can do.
I have no problem with memorial.
That said, I'll vote yes.
All right. Mr. Coble?
Yes.
Mr. LaCourte?
Yes. And I'll keep the attorney's feet to the fire to make sure that it gets done.
Ms. MacGyver?
Yes.
Mr. Pettit?
Yeah, I'm going to vote for that, and I agree with Ted. If it's in the resolution, that'll at least keep the door open to resolve it, maybe.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Alderman?
Yes.
Chairman Orsini?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank everyone for your input tonight. Do we, Vince, do we have anything else?
Nope. Vince, I'm going to be away October.
Can make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right.